You're listening to Cottontail's podcast, part of the Silicon Valley Black Project, which produced the documentary film A Place at the Table about the Black pioneers of Silicon Valley. A Place at the Table can be viewed for rent on Vimeo.com on demand /A Place at the Table STEM. Through Cottontail's podcast, the Silicon Valley Black Project will continue to recognize the contributions made by African Americans. We will be featuring African American professionals, technologists in the fields of engineering, administration, and entrepreneurial pursuits from the past and present. Today, we're talking to S.T. Saffold, former acting vice president of San Jose State University. He has helped many students of color find their way and reach their full potential through the programs he's managed. ST used his athletics and intelligence to become an outstanding student and later a campus leader through the office of the university president. He is now a pillar in his community, still volunteering and still leading others to realize their potential. ST, can you tell me a little bit about your family?
Okay, I was born in a little old town that I found out about 25 years ago from family members who visited back in Mississippi. Mm-hmm. Little town called Slaughter, Mississippi. And I think it was a mispronunciation on the part of country folks living down there because it's spelled every bit like Slater. Yeah. S-L-A-T-E-R. Somehow they got Slaughter out of that. But Walter and I were born there. Mm-hmm. And it no longer exists. I think my nephew and older brothers at the time went down there to visit, and they saw, I think, one little mom and pop kind of store, and I think like a little gasoline station, and that was the entire footprint of what used to be Slater, however large that footprint was back then.
Wow. But did you come to California when you were relatively young, or?
Yeah, I was the last one of my mother's 12 kids. Was born in Mississippi. Mm-hmm. My younger sister was born in L.A., and that's where we came. We came to L.A. and I think it was February of 1946, so it was just short of my second birthday. Lived there. I don't recall much of L.A. Mm-hmm. Before, just tidbits I think that happened before I was in kindergarten. I attended kindergarten there.
What was the reason for moving to Northern California? I'm sure it was your parents' reason. Was it the jobs up here or family up here?
Precisely. We were in L.A. We left, as a matter of fact, it could have been the day after school, my kindergarten year. My father, at some point during those 4 years that we were in LA, used to drive, he and I think some of my older brothers, over the hill, down into, I think maybe just south of Bakersfield to the cotton fields to make money. Yeah. And I don't know how often they did it, but they did it. Mm-hmm. And from that, I think that experience, he found out that in the valley, we had all kinds of fields, mm-hmm. orchards with all kinds of fruit, with onion fields, tomato fields, etc. You just go on down the list. Mm-hmm. And, he had this crew of children.
Yes.
And so that was, I'm sure, foremost in his mind that we were, in a practical sense, a source of income and survival for the family. And I'm told by some of my older brothers I started working in the fields, by the way, right after my second grade. I was 7 years old. And I was told by one of my brothers that we did pretty well in the fields. And, there were side benefits. The fruit, the vegetables that we worked in, the foreman or the owner of the farm would allow people to take maybe a bucket or a box home, even daily. And so we did that, and my mother and my sisters canned just about everything that could be canned. And that was part of our survival across the winter.
Yeah, I can identify with that.
Yeah, my mom did go to the market every Friday night. I figured out very shortly that if I went to the market with her, my father was like the chauffeur. He'd drive her around, then she'd go in and shop. He'd wait in the car, find somebody to talk to, kill time. I found out that if I went with him, then I could push the stroller, as she went around to the various stores. And what my mom did was she plotted out. There were Safeway, Don Quick, were two that I remember. She kind of plotted out where the sales were.
Yeah.
And so she wouldn't buy all of her stuff at Safeway, because 2 or 3 miles across town, she could go over there and get, 1 or 2 products a little cheaper. And so I found out, pushing the cart, she would allow me to get one thing, one treat. And I'll tell you, my treat was essentially, it was either one of those big old, and they were kind of large, 10-cent Baby Ruth bars, or a pack of banana cream cookies. Never forget those. And my father made it very clear to me that if I took any of it home, I had to share.
That's right.
So Kathy, there were about 15, 16, 17 cookies, and they were fairly good size.
Yes.
Of those banana creams. I ate every single one of them before I got home. He wasn't trying to teach greed.
No.
He was trying to teach share.
Yeah.
But for me, he went about it the wrong way.
Right. Wrong message.
She would get the staples. I remember him giving her. She managed all the money. She set aside $20 a week for shopping, if you can believe that.
I can.
For 13 miles in the house.
Yeah.
But she would use that to get staples. 20-pound sack of flour every week, 10-pound sack of cornmeal. I remember at least that. Likewise, 10 or 20-pound bag of sugar, and the other kinds of things that she needed to use to make biscuits. We ate hot, homemade biscuits 7 days a week, every single day. And I tell you, can't nobody cook no biscuits like my mom.
Right.
But it was nothing for my mom to cook 100+ biscuits every morning.
Yeah. Nope. So. I absolutely understand that. So what was your first job?
That was my first job.
That was? Okay.
Working in the fields.
All right.
7 years old. And there was no option involved. It was a requirement.
So what did you learn from working in the fields? So help shape you.
My father told us, and I remember this like it was just yesterday. He used to tell us all the time, he could not afford school beyond high school. Actually, junior college was free too back then.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I think you had to buy your own books and stuff, but he couldn't afford, school, the cost of school or anything. So he would regularly tell us, I make you go to the fields. I make you get up at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, every morning in the summer, except for, thank God, we were Christians and we had, church on Sunday.
Yeah.
And Saturday was also a day of rest too. But for those 5 days, I make you go because I want you to dislike this so much. You're going to have to work, but I want you to dislike this lifestyle so much that you will do whatever it takes legally to not have to do this when you get older. Mm-hmm. And, that stuck with me. I was bound and determined that post Edison was college. Mm-hmm. And I was very fortunate enough in my years leading up to that graduation to have mentors. I can name them, Ben Parks, Coach Washington, Charles Washington, Coach Taggart when I got to high school, Miss Cummings, my favorite history teacher, only because she let me do whatever I wanted to do. I was very selfish, but she was such a sweetheart. Yeah. And I can, the list goes on. Obviously, my parents are at the top of the list on, the mentors. But those folks who worked in education saw something in me, that potential, that for going beyond high school into college, that I didn't see before. I don't know whether you remember seeing on a commercial every now and then on TV back in the day where, I forget exactly how it went, but, college, the doors of college were not open to just everyone. And I had the sense that college was unreachable, especially for a Black youngster, given the societal stuff that we had to deal with, that it was just not a realistic goal to set for yourself. And I found myself just kind of believing. Coach Taggart in Washington, they showed us films of them playing football at UOP, COP at the time. And I began to think, he's Ghost Pacific. There's a possibility there. Saw a couple of Black guys lead, a couple of basketball players back in the late 50s. The center, Wright, I think was his last name. And I began, to see, well, maybe it is possible. And they started talking about scholarships, where you get your college paid for. Right. And so, filled with that, then that kind of changed my whole attitude about, the possibility of going. It became more a reality or a possibility for me. And,
So your early inspiration were the teachers at Edison High School and the coaches.
Yes.
When you went to college, did you start at Delta or did you start at San Jose State?
I had a basketball scholarship at San Jose State. Okay. And actually, I almost didn't go there. I had about 11 firm offers out of Edison for college, full rides, and visited several campuses, one of which was Washington State University, and I think it was Washington State College at the time, which had been out of the athletic conference that USC, Stanford, Cal, Berkeley are in. They had been out of that for 5 years. I went to visit there. It was a beautiful spring day, weekend, no hint of snow. Rolling hills, green rolling hills, just beautiful. I committed to go there, accept the scholarship. After I signed the letter of intent, the conference that Stanford, Washington State had been in brought them back into the conference. that raised their entry GPA requirements, and they were pretty firm about it at the time, to a 3.2 or 3.0, the absolute minimum. And if you didn't reach that, they could maybe sponsor you at a community college until you got the transferable grade requirements. So they had to revoke my acceptance, and which they did. And I was one happy dog because San Jose State was my second choice because my girlfriend was going there at the time. And it was, to me, it was like God's guidance to this old hard-headed boy, because attending San Jose State and up through most of the years of my current marriage, well, until my mother passed away, I had to come back home to Stockton every other weekend, like clockwork, no exceptions. So I would have been stuck up there for at least the duration of their semester, come home during the break. But San Jose State, it worked for me. I was, it was just great. So I went to San Jose State on a basketball scholarship for 4 years. My 4-year scholarship to San Jose State totaled a total of $5,000 for 4 years of full-time education. And with the guidance of a mentor there, Harry Edwards, the infamous Dr. Harry Edwards, teammate and great friend and mentor, I was able to come within 6 units at the end of my 4 years of graduating. And like Harry used to tell Tommy Smith and I, Tommy was my roommate for 4 years, you have to get in these books, study what you don't want to study, lie to yourself, tell yourself you do want to study it, for those subjects, and make sure that you get, by the time your scholarship plays out, that you get so close to your degree that you could, and this was his phrasing, you could beg, steal, or borrow enough money, to knock that out and then get on your way. I was fortunate enough, because it took me that extra semester, which fell in the fall of then what was my 5th year, because I had played football and, from coach's perception, I played well enough, they gave me a 5th year scholarship, full ride to play football. And in the spring of 66, my 4th year, I got what they called a red shirt draft by what was then the American Football League, San Diego Chargers, and by the 49ers.
Now, you ended up teaching at San Jose State, did you not? Was that after you played football? Or?
I think you knew Glenn Toney.
Yes.
In the summer of 69, and I had played football, stepped away, a stint with the Chargers, a season with Cincinnati. So by summer of 69, I had made the decision to retire. Okay. But Glenn got the job as director of what was then the Black EOP, Educational Opportunity Program. Had me get in touch with him. I had met Glenn back in 63 when he came to San Jose State as a student, graduate student. Right. He put the word out, had me come and contact him, and I did. We talked. I told him I had absolutely no administrative experience. He said, "That's okay. You can follow me. I will show you the ropes, at least get you started on that path." I was an alum there. They were familiar with me. Many of the faculty and administrators followed sports. I got the job as Glenn's assistant director, the Black EOP program, and my path was purely administrative during my 35 years there.
What were your titles?
Initially, again, I was assistant director for the Black EOP program. We had a brown program too. Okay. Glenn left after 1 year, left me hanging after 1 year. And he went off into, the industry, let me say.
High tech, we put it like that, high tech.
Yes. I was left with a very competent secretary. We had a very fine, very positive relationship. She was a workaholic. And so with her help, I was able to run the program. It was always a learning experience for me. I was in that role for, maybe 2.5 years. After about 2.5 years, I think it was the spring of 73, there was always this dynamic between the Blacks and the Mexican Americans, Chicanos, as they referred to themselves. And it came to a head. The university received money for the EOP program, for one program. The campus would get the money for one EOP and they would break it up. With ours, they broke it up between us and the Brown program. And it was 42% for the Black program, 58% for the Brown program. How they arrived at that, I don't know originally, because by the spring of 73, Brown program complained to the feds through a lawsuit what they were wanting based upon their population, what they call the service area of the university. Their cut should be 90% and ours 10%. And that was along racial lines as a criteria for that. The feds essentially wrote back and said to the universities, this is not allowed. Money cannot be divided based upon racial lines. So it backfired on them. What the feds told all the campuses, you have to merge all of those programs. We're going to give you a year to do it. If you have not done it by 74, we will cut off the funds, not give you any. And that was big for us because, the federal financial aid programs, that would have been cut off, and our students, low income, vast majority. Fortunately, the leadership of the Brown program, at its head at least, the director had retired. He still had influence and exercised it. But the new director at the time, he and I were able to get together. And we decided we will get together and we will effect a merger administratively of the program and physically as well. Some effect of that was organizationally, we had 2 directors. So the organization that we came up with was to elevate one of us to the position of an associate dean, because at that point we were reporting to the dean of student services. And so I became associate dean for student services. The director then reported to the dean through. We hashed it out among ourselves, first of all. We kind of troubleshot it. He just kind of shook his head and he said, okay, looks like you guys put in a lot of work on this. Presented to the vice president, and, let's assume that it's done, because the vice president was not going to present a challenge to anything the dean, recommended. That had been preset by them. I became the associate dean for the Division of Student Affairs, or Student Services at the time. And I subsequently wrote a proposal to the feds to bring in the Upper Bound program, a federally funded program, which at that time replicated pretty much for non-EOP students, but students who were academically exceptional, had some educational deficiencies, academic deficiencies, if you will. But I got both of those programs federally funded, and they reported to me. And I was fortunate enough, approximately every 6 years, I was able to experience a significant change. The 82-83 year, I was searching for something else to do. And I'm talking to the same dean, my boss. We kind of agreed. A good friend of mine was the university ombudsman. Mm. And so he agreed to let me do part-time training in the ombudsman's office. And so I spent much of that year, along with my other administrative duties, supervising duties, learning the ombudsman's role and kind of shadowing that person. After spring of 83, that person left and I became the university ombudsman, reporting directly to the president. And I stayed in that role longer than anyone ever did. I think I found, I would back up and say that the work that I did in EOP, bringing students in, primarily Black students into Black EOP, while not exclusively, but certainly predominantly Black students into San Jose State, who were what they classified as special admits. They did not have the grades. We were given just a free hand based upon, and we based it upon what we saw as their motivation and their potential, based upon, to a minimal extent, their academic performance in certain courses in high school and community college, as the case were in some cases, mostly from high school, and an autobiographical statement about their plans, their motivation, and how they could convince us that they were going to take advantage of this opportunity, despite their prior academic performance, utilize the services that we had, which included counseling and intensive tutoring, along with the financial aid that we gave them, which EOP money was a part of that. But based upon those things, we could accept them. We accepted students who had 1 point something GPA. And, I'm just so proud to say that a significant number, I don't have exact figures or percentages, but a significant number of those students coming from Compton High School, which one of the students once told me the teachers would give you a B if you didn't put sugar in the gas tank, that kind of thing. If you threaten them, they'd give you a B, But two of the students who always stick out in mind from Compton High School with a 1.7, they were brothers, one older than the other. Both of them came to San Jose State, and again, they're just examples, a few examples of so many. They came to San Jose State, took advantage of the tutoring. As a matter of fact, became tutors themselves. And they had a 1 point, each of them, I think 1.6, 1.7 GPA from Compton High School. Both of them went through, graduated in business. I know the older one got his MBA, got his MBA, and he very well might have gone on beyond that. So we had a number of those kinds of examples, students who came in with those kinds of GPAs from those kinds of backgrounds, if you will, academically. Several got their PhDs, got their doctoral degrees, So, just a tremendous amount of just, I smile when I think about, those cases and the fact that they were large in number. We lost a few, of course, but.
Did you enter those positions that you held in administration with the idea that you would focus on those type of students, or did that evolve through the system itself?
I think it evolved, but very early, because I saw in those students, I saw myself. When I got to San Jose State and I had to take psychology, Kathy, I had never even heard the term psychology in any context. I had to take physiology. Never heard of physiology in any context. It was a foreign word. And I can go on and on. There were several others, that, aside from being even minimally prepared for the coursework, never heard of them. And so, I told them they used to have a reunion of students, Black students, who had, almost all of them who had gone through the Black EOP, or later the merged EOP. They'd come back to San Jose State around the time of the Jazz Festival. And I was invited back, and, I'd walk into the room, and quite a few of them came back, classroom sides filled. And I'd walk into the room and they'd start applauding. And, the chant, ST, ST, I'm saying, what's that all about, And they told me, that they told their kids, the older ones who had kids who were in college, and a few of them had them come to San Jose State, that I was the one, who got them in and who was responsible for their degree and them getting an education, from where they were. And I was very quick to tell them, because they had me speak, of course. And I said, I got you in, and, I accept, the kudos and so forth for doing that, grudgingly as it is. But I said, I got you in, but you got you through. Because if you hadn't utilized the services that we provided, the services that we referred you to, that were available to all students on campus, you wouldn't have made it. And so, that helped. It helped them, but it also helped me. I became an associate. The title given to me was Associate Vice President / University Ombudsman. I was given a dual title to kind of move me into the Associate VP position. From there, and this brings us up to 1995, the then president of the university, had retired some years before. We had an interim that went through the process. The new president was coming on board in 95. My vice president somehow didn't feel a positive connection to the incoming president. I don't know what it was with that summer. Announced it. The president told him, or asked him to recommend somebody to be the interim vice president. My vice president had been grooming this one young white woman with a rather recent law degree. And she had been there that previous year, and it was very clear to anyone, Ray Charles, Stevie Wonder even, that was what he was doing with her. The new president, when he came on campus, was confronted by a coalition of the Black and brown and Asian students. And he had a forum. One of the first things he did was forums with the faculty, administration, students. At his student forum, that coalition of students literally hollered him down because there was no Black person sitting at the president's table, his cabinet at the time. Had never been a Black person sitting at the table. Except, and there's one caveat to that. The president prior, Gail Fullerton, the first woman president, had for a year had a Black special assistant, wonderful young brother, that she pulled into the office. He was the very first, but again, that lasted 1 year, and she went back to the tradition, got a white male to do that, and that was kind of okay because he did his job well.
Right.
But that coalition, that evening, invited, after shouting the president down at the student forum, he finally gave up, and they did it in a beautiful way.
Yeah.
You know, if you can imagine, just picture the president standing at the podium in front of, it was kind of a sparse crowd of students, and encircling him, with the exception of the space in front of the podium, encircling him and giving him, maybe a yard of separation. Literally, and I forget what the chant was, but shouting him down. He could not communicate with the students in the audience. He, to his credit, he did not call the police in. They were standing out in the hallway. He then grabbed the microphone and started to walk down the stairs from the podium out to the students. And what the group that encircled him did, they moved with him. It was like a circle with the president in the middle. They cleared the way for him to walk down the stairs. They followed afterwards, left an opening for him to engage with any students that he wanted, keeping that beautiful distance, but hollering that chant. And he attempted to move around the building to various other student groups. They followed him with that vacuum. And he finally gave up and left, met with the police outside, and he wasn't concerned, but they were concerned for his safety as they saw it.
Right.
He then, very shortly after getting, I think, back to his office, received a list of demands, I think there were about 11 of them, from the BSU, inviting him to come to their meeting that evening, which conflicted with an engagement that he had, a commitment that he had at another organization off campus. He sent his wife to that other event, telling her that he would meet her later. He went to the BSU meeting. I had a tremendous amount of respect for him for doing that. He went, received their list. And my reason for sharing that too lengthy bit was, one of the things on that list was that you have a Black person sitting at your table with your cabinet, the president's cabinet. And so the vice president, my boss, was leaving. The president told him to get him somebody, who on his staff could serve in that position. He told him the white woman was an associate vice president. I was an associate vice president. I believe we were the only two at that. No, I'm sorry. There was a third, a white male, who was near retirement. Mm. The president said, I want him. I want ST I want to appoint him as the interim vice president. I never forget the look on my boss's face when he called me in his office. And he told me, he said, and I knew what he was doing. He had not mentored me at all, okay? But he knew he would have gotten reamed up and down if he had mentioned the white woman who'd only been there 1 year.
Right.
And at that point, Kathy, I had been there 26 years. And so he called me in the office and he rolled it out to me. This is what the president would like, for you to be vice president. And he said, would you consider that? And I said, absolutely not. And it was based on the fact that not only I would be the first one, granted, but I would have reporting to me, and ultimately had. And I was ST, I was the ombudsman, I was associate vice president, I was, something less than someone, who should be over them.
But ST, you knew where all the bodies were buried. You knew all the ins and outs of the university, 26 years. It didn't occur to them that maybe they could learn something from you?
No, they thought they knew everything. I was instrumental, I feel, in getting the first permanent Black African-American vice president selected for the campus in the history of the campus. And I always say in the history because when I came, there was nothing. There were 3 Black faculty members, no janitors, no secretaries, no teachers, other than those 3, absolutely no administrators there. So the first permanent Black president or vice president person at that level was hired during the process that I withdrew from.
Who was that person?
She became my boss.
Who was that person?
I went back to the VP. Her name was Monica Rascoe, Rascoe. And, I got to say, Kathy, I had been there at that point then some 28 years when she started in 97. Well, let me say that after she left, there was, of course, the white replacement. He was replaced in a permanent way because he did not seek the position permanently. Okay. But the next person was white, and that didn't work out too well, terminated, or reassigned because he did have retreat rights. Subsequently, they did have another African-American woman. Mm-hmm. I never got the chance to meet her. Didn't happen to go back to the campus while she was available. And she left after some period, not forgetting exactly how long, on her own accord, as I understand. I think she was replaced by the brother who had come from Southern California. And I did get a chance to interact with him, get to know him. Did a wonderful job by all accounts. So part of me smiles in reflection because I think I showed them or began to show them that a Black person can do the job, and I think subsequently they should not, if they had any negative feelings at all about my leadership, about Monica's leadership, that they should not attribute any of that negativity to any other Black applicant for this position. We did some things well. We may have done some things for which, we can legitimately be criticized.
Right.
But my message to them was to treat all the Black applicants like you treat the white applicants. Mm-hmm. You don't get, of all the white folks who come in there and do that job and screw things up, you don't blanketly apply those same characteristics and personalities to every other white applicant. To some extent, that kind of an attitude fell by the wayside, as proven by the fact that, these subsequent vice presidents have been African Americans. Mm-hmm. And, one was replaced by the other,
Yeah.
And so that kind of mindset has been kind of at least modified, if not eliminated, from the minds of the current bosses, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe they learned something in the process as well, that when they start looking at track records, they had to look at individual contributions rather than the individual themselves and what they looked like.
Right.
And something you said was very interesting, and I heard this from a little Hispanic young lady who was being challenged on a board of some kind because she had gotten into Harvard or Yale, one of these, through affirmative action. And so this young white male was very upset and saying that she took up the place of someone who was more than qualified to get in on their own. And she said, I may have gotten in with affirmative action, but no one did my homework. No one does the work for you, but you've got to open the doors for some of these young people because you don't know their circumstances. Well, I didn't realize that you had retired in 2004. I don't know why. I thought you had been there much, much longer than that.
Oh, no.
Did you teach after that, or did you go to any other colleges? Or?
No, I made it a point to interact with employees at all levels. Mm-hmm. You mentioned the secretaries before.
Yes.
Wow, that's number one. Mm-hmm. Guys who worked as electricians at the university.
Yeah.
But I would have actually had breakfast with mainly guys at various levels, administrative down to guys who mowed the lawns, Mm-hmm. We'd meet in the cafeteria virtually every morning.
For the first time, somebody saw them.
Yeah, and treated them like more than a subordinate.
And respected the work that they did do, the contribution they were making every day to that campus.
And my point, that brings me back to the point I think that you asked me. Mm-hmm. I used to share with them at our little breakfast get-togethers or anytime I met them on campus. I said, when I retire, I'm going to do what you do. I may come back here. It may not be at San Jose State, but I may get me a job, so I don't take this stuff home with me, like I do, 9 to 5 or whatever. And when I punch out, I punch out, And I was serious at the time, but the perfect outlet was the ministries at our church, doing things there. And we found those, and we're now into our second church since retirement, but I still do the food ministry at our previous church. Our previous one was in Sacramento, our current one's in Stockton. The heart of the person who runs it he's a beautiful human being. His mother, likewise. Mm-hmm. And that's a long story, too long to tell. But beautiful human beings, and it's just, I feel just wonderful when I get up in the morning, early in the morning, to meet them to either go get the food or to meet at the church and set up and have the people come through. And, the interesting kinds of exchanges that we have with, people who may not need the food, but what they do is they take the food and they give it to people that they know who need it. Being a part of that whole arm.
As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, I am sure there are thousands of Black folks who said, I am so glad ST was there. If it hadn't been for you. Because one of the questions I ask is, how do you think you affected your community? Well, I hear how you affected your community. You built a community. You took those kids who'd been given no break.
I always, Kathy, I always had difficulty accepting accepting credit. That's the word I'm looking for performance of others. That was one of the problems that I had in the application process for the permanent vice president position and making my resume out, which remember I was hired originally just based on note paper. And so keeping a resume, starting one, building it over those years is something I had not done. So I sat down with my confidant, the associate VP that I had when I was interim, and one of the the only African-American staff member in one of my departments to go about building a resume, put it in writing. And I never forget that as we were talking about the things that had happened while I was interim vice president or while I was associate VP under me with one of the programs reporting to me, I was very quick to give credit to the director, to give credit to the person who actually did the bulk of the groundwork, the footwork, if you will. And both of them working with me to build that resume said, well, ST, this happened under your leadership, didn't it? I said, yes, but they did it. But it happened under your leadership, so it should go down as a part of your accomplishments. And I said, I had real difficulty with that.
That's sad.
So, and I, as I said to the students' performances, I got them in, but, they did the grunt work. And so I may have contributed, and I accept that. I may have been the primary motivation or the initial motivation. I accept that. But that's just one step in that total development process. Yeah. And I always feel that has to be, put at the forefront rather than me being at the forefront, because
let's just put it this way. You know how they have this saying that you can take a horse to the water, but you can't make them drink?
Right.
Okay, so you were the water. There's 20 horses. 10 drank, 10 didn't. Would you take credit for the 10 that drank? Had you not provided that water, would they be able to drink?
No, that's true.
Well, take credit for some of that, ST. Trust me. Oh, it's been a pleasure. I thank you for supporting me in this crazy mess I'm doing. But this is
absolutely.
It's been a pleasure talking to you, seeing you again, and take care.
Take care.
Thank you, ST, for speaking with me today. Your life work has enabled many hundreds of students of color to realize their desire to accomplish a college degree that can lead to a better life for them and their families. And thank you for your work at San Jose State University, as well as the volunteer work you're doing in your community today. And thank you for listening.